Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. Haven't been around the last couple of days. I know Pete told me you were out protesting, throwing rocks at the building. I appreciate all my supporters. We are back in full force today. Good to have you with us on a cloudy Thursday here in Northeast Florida. I guess I brought the clouds with me. I have been in Dublin, Ireland for the last couple of days. Had to make a quick little trip over there. It was a pleasure. I have to tell you, if you're ever in Dublin or if you're in Dublin right now, by any chance, of course, we can be heard all over the world via the Listen Live link on thesocialgambler.com or 1420sports.com or the TuneIn Radio app on... It's TuneIn, right, Pete? Mm-hmm. TuneIn, yeah. TuneIn Radio app. So no excuse. So if you're in Dublin right now listening to the show, or if you're going to go to Dublin in the future and you want to gamble, be sure to check out the Sporting Emporium. Casino manager there, Albert, really took good care of me. He'll take good care of you too. I was impressed. It wasn't quite what I was used to, where you get toothless rednecks feeding quarters into slot machines. Had a little bit more of an upscale, classy feel. Maybe that's because there were no slot machines. I did start my lobby for a craps table. Would like to see a craps table, but no. Had a great time there. Albert will take good care of you. If you ever go to Dublin, Ireland, be sure to check out the Sporting Emporium. Now, there was a couple of pieces of news while I was gone. The one I want to start with, and what really brought a smile to my face, and should bring a smile to all like-minded, at least those who are like-minded with me, all like-minded sports radio fans here in the Jacksonville area. Pete Prisco was fired from his afternoon show on 9:30. Isn't that nice? Pete Prisco, if you've never heard his show, the guy, he's a writer for CBSSports.com also, so fancies himself an expert. I guess more of an expert than the rest of us. When I say the rest of us, I mean football fans, people who very closely follow the game. I always had a bit of condescension when he was dealing with, callers or people of that nature, that he would treat, the reporter from the St. Louis Dispatch like he was a visiting Greek god or something. But, Pete Prisco, and I've told you before on this show, I called his show a couple of times because the guy's just, he'll just blatantly say something like it's a fact that's just incorrect. And if you call him on it, he'll quickly say, watch the tape. He would. Excuse me. Let me begin talking about that in the past tense. Before he was sitting home, he's right now sitting home with Cheetos crumbs on his undershirt, no doubt about it. But he would speak with, condescension, watch the tape. And I told him one time, I said, buddy, nobody watches more NFL football than me. What are you talking about? I'll watch reruns of games in June on the NFL Network. I mean, and then he'll cut you off and he'll be like, oh, do you watch the sideline tape? Do you watch the coach's tape? Well, he'll have plenty of time to watch tape now because he'll no longer be on live radio. This guy was a notorious, one of the subjects that he was big on, sort of staked his show on over the last couple of years, is that Tim Tebow could not play football. Some people agree with him, some people in the area. Gradually, as the season went along last year, I think he was forced to eat his hat a little bit on that opinion. But anyway, we won't be hearing that opinion anymore, fortunately. So a good day in this area. Pete Prisco now out of work, at least on the radio side. Social Gambler Radio Hour still coming to you. And it's good to be here. British Open currently ongoing. I mentioned I've been in Dublin, Ireland for the last couple of days. Played a great links golf course day before yesterday called Portmarnock. Portmarnock. Great links golf course. But I can sympathize with those guys I was watching this morning over at Royal Lytham and St. Anne's with that rough. I mean, you hit a ball 3 or 4 steps off the fairway, some of these courses over there, and you're looking for it. Collectively as a group, we probably lost 15 balls the other day, but had fun nonetheless. Adam Scott's having fun right now at Lytham and St. Anne's. Tied the course record with a 6-under par 64 earlier today. Currently has a 1-shot lead over Nicholas Kolsarts, a German who's never really contended in a major, and Paul Lawrie, he's actually won the British Open at Carnoustie a few years ago. Zach Johnson also there at 5 under, just a shot back. Brandt Snedeker at 4 under, 2 shots back, and the group at 3 under. It's a large group. headlined by some big names: Tiger Woods, Ernie Els, Bubba Watson, Graham McDowell. A lot of people right in the mix at 3 under. Really a good leaderboard, a big name leaderboard, sets up for a really good tournament. As usual, there's some surprises on the British Open leaderboard. I think more than any other major. Maybe it's because I live over here in the U.S., and so some of these guys who play European mini tours or the Sunshine Tour in South Africa, I'm not quite as familiar with them. A guy like J.B. Kruger, I was watching him play today. By the way, a hideous move this guy has. Hideous swing, hideous putting stroke. But I watched him in a couple of shots. I watched him swing and said, ooh. Then the camera pans to the green. Ball falls about 6 feet from the pin. And I thought, hey, maybe I should try that. Half a backswing. Guy hardly takes a backswing. J.B. Kruger. I follow golf. Had never heard of this guy, the South African. He's at 2 under, tied with another guy I've never heard of. Anirban Lahiri. You know, when you can't recognize the flag of the country. No, I believe he's from India or Pakistan. Anyway, British Open, my second favorite golf tournament to watch behind the Masters. I enjoy watching the British Open. Most people, a lot of people would say U.S. Open, but to me, usually, the U.S. Open, is just true browbeating. Some people like to see, the pros struggle and all that, and I understand not wanting to see 20 and 24 under win every week. But if the best players in the world, if over par is winning a golf tournament, I'm not that interested in that. One of the dullest Masters in recent memory was that year Zach Johnson won, when the course played incredibly tough because the greens were rock hard. And Zach Johnson just, stuck to his game plan, laid up on all the par 5s, and ended up winning the tournament. I think the folks at Augusta National realized that, and they the course hasn't played like that since then. They've made changes and got some excitement back into it. And there'll be some excitement at Lytham this week. Obviously, scores were low today. It was soft out there. They were able to hold the ball on the green. Not much wind also. Got a chance to play Royal Lytham when I was 15 years old, a long time ago. 15 years ago to be exact. Really struggled. I mean, I remember most of the holes, and I remember that ate my lunch, absolutely ate my lunch. So a little depressing to see these guys tearing it up. Of course, I suppose they are the best players in the world. But the British Open ongoing. Breaking news in the NFL today, about an hour before the show, we learned the Indianapolis Colts have signed number 1 overall pick Andrew Luck. So Luck is signed. He will be in camp. At the beginning of camp, there will be no holdout. Contract reportedly worth $22 million, fully guaranteed. $14.5 million signing bonus. So basically, it's a carbon copy of Cam Newton's contract last year. Actually, if these terms, it won't become official until they announce it, but if the reports are to be believed and it's $22 million flat, that will be less than $1 million more than number 2 pick Robert Griffin's contract. Griffin, of course, signed yesterday, 4-year, $21.1 million, also fully guaranteed, like Luck's. And again, if it's true that Luck's for $22 million flat, it'll be $250,000, $250,000 less than Cam Newton's contract last year. So the new rookie wage scale, number 1 picks, they don't make what they used to. Now, I know you or I aren't crying any tears for Andrew Luck here. I'm aware that a $14.5 million signing bonus, $22 million in guaranteed money, I think he'll be all right. But compare that, for example, to 2010, the last year before the new rookie wage scale that was negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement before last season. Sam Bradford, the number 1 overall pick in 2010, signed an $86 million contract with $50 million guaranteed. $50 million guaranteed, $86 million total. A couple of years later, number 1 pick Andrew Luck went from $86 million to $22 million. And what has changed over the last couple of years in the NFL? I'll tell you what's changed. It's gotten a lot bigger. A record 180 million American households watched the Super Bowl last year. That is roughly 2/3 of the country, folks. So to me, The NFL Players Union, I mean, and the fact that they're the weakest union in sports, which is known, I mean, they're weaker than the Major League Baseball Players Union or the NBA Players Union. Have been for years, and it's probably good for the sport. NFL popularity has skyrocketed because of that. There are no guaranteed contracts in the NFL, something certainly all players would like. All players would like to know the $40 million for 6 years they signed for, they're going to actually get that instead of the team being able to cut them at the end of any year and not owe them the rest of the contract. Well, baseball players, basketball players, they have that luxury. Football players don't. But that creates sort of cutthroat competition, everyone trying to win their job every year. But you see, the combination of the complaints over the last 2 or 3 months about the amount of power Roger Goodell has. And that was negotiated in the last agreement, the last collective bargaining agreement. Roger Goodell, he's the judge, jury, and executioner. He hands down the punishments. If you appeal, he decides on the appeals. Not surprisingly, since Roger Goodell took over as commissioner, this is a fact, folks. Not one appeal has won. He's turned down every one. What's a shocker? Of course he thought it was fair. He was the one who determined the punishment. Why would he listen to an appeal? But because of that, because the NFL itself is so strong and the union's so weak, it's made for a great game. But if you're the players and you think, well, Roger Goodell sort of, has too much power, we weren't able to negotiate that, and the guys coming to the league are making a whole lot less money. Now, I know some veteran players a few years ago, they had a problem with guys like Sam Bradford coming in, getting all this money when they haven't proven anything. But still, it's odd that a business, any kind of business, not only a sports league, it's odd when a business steadily grows. And the NFL now is bigger than it ever was. Like I said, 180 million households watching the Super Bowl. American households watching the Super Bowl last year, a record. Record television contracts. Everything in the NFL keeps going up and up. Ticket prices. Jaguars fans, has there been any decrease in ticket prices? League-wide, the Jaguars have kept their tickets relatively low compared to some other teams in the league. League-wide, of course, ticket prices have risen over the last couple of years. The NFL is making more money. Who's making less? The players. So, good for the NFL, I guess. DeMaurice Smith, new head of the Players Union, or new, he's been head of the Players Union for a couple of years now, replacing Gene Upshaw. Gene Upshaw was always criticized for being sort of walked on by Paul Tagliabue, who was the commissioner at the time, and DeMaurice Smith, for all his tough talk, really hits home when you see that number 1 pick Andrew Luck, who is as highly touted and hyped as any quarterback I can remember coming out of college in the last 10, 15 years. This guy is viewed as a can't-miss prospect. Not since Peyton Manning, perhaps, have we seen somebody who's viewed as much of a can't-miss prospect as Andrew Luck. And when you see him signing for $22 million, that's the total of his deal. A couple of years after Sam Bradford's making $86 million, really underlines that, you really exposes the fact that the NFL Players Union, I don't know how hard they're working for their players here. Justin Blackmon, the highest pick, still unsigned. There might be a reason for that due to his DUI arrest. No doubt Gene Smith, the rest of the Jaguars front office, does not want to give him a deal with a lot of guarantees. They want to be able to get out of the deal in case Blackmon, flakes out or turns out to be just like all the previous Jacksonville Jaguar first-round picks at wide receiver. I'm talking about the Matt Jones, the Reggie Williams, the R.J. Sowards of the world. Guys who let off-the-field issues sort of overcome what they could do on the field. Hopefully it won't be that way for Blackmon, but Blackmon is still unsigned. However, when we were gone, Josh Scobie agreed to a contract. That's good for Scobie, and I think it's good for the Jaguars. A good move to lock Scobie up, who's one of the best kickers in the league. Signed a four-year deal, $3.45 million a year. Puts him as the second highest paid kicker in the league behind Sebastian Janikowski. My only question would be, what took so long? Suppose it doesn't matter now, though. All's well that ends well. Scobie was supposedly keeping himself in good shape, even though he missed the team's off-season program. So we'll see if he can kick even better this year now that some of the pressure will be off. If he was working under the one-year franchise deal, nothing would have been guaranteed beyond this year. First off, he would have been making $750,000 less than he's going to make now, and he would have the pressure of, it would be another contract year. If he kicked poorly this upcoming season, it might cost him a lot. Now that pressure's off, we'll see how that works out, if there's obvious improvement. We have to go to a break now, but before we do, I have to remind you, because I believe I forgot to in the beginning of the show, that we are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com. Your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. Loads of fresh content, completely free, on the Social Gambler Daily. Lots of stuff on there today. We'll get to some of it here in a little bit. And folks, I've told you before, the Social Gambler is a place you can get all your free picks, free sports news, free sports information. If you want to act on the advice and take advantage of the picks, the only place here in Northeast Florida you can legally do so, the only legal sports book here in the area, is at the Jacks Are Better Casino. The Jacks Are Better, of course, the casino ship that sails 9 times weekly out of Mayport, every day except for Tuesday now. That's right, the Jacks Are Better now sailing on Monday. Every day except for Tuesday. Go out to the Jacks Are Better. In addition to the sports book, full Vegas action. Have a nice afternoon or evening out on the ocean. Win a little money while you're at it. Anytime you go out there, be sure to mention this radio show, the Social Gambler Radio Hour, and they'll give you $10 free play. That's right, just for mentioning this radio show, the Social Gambler Radio Hour, they will give you $10. You can use same as cash anywhere on the ship. Pay him a visit out there at the Jacks Are Better Casino. As I said, we do have to go to a quick break. 794-9001 is the number if you'd like to join the show in the next segment. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
Nothing says love like Italian food, so don't take her to a generic big chain Italian place. Take her to Casa Benedetto.
Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us this afternoon. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join the program, 794-9001. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. Plenty of stuff on the Social Gambler today. Canadian Football League, hey, it's a slow time in the sports calendar. Olympics betting, if you're interested in that. Plenty of stuff on that and plenty more. Both American and European sports. They have contributors on both sides of the Atlantic. And they're not just a website, they're an app for your smartphone. Be sure to check them out. The Social Gambler. If you're not listening to us on ESPN 1420, St. Augustine Sports Leader, we can be heard via the Listen Live link on thesocialgambler.com. But I know most of you are listening to us on ESPN 1420. And a lot's been changing around here the last couple of days. Couple of weeks, maybe. Pete gets in office. How does Pete get in office? I come in here today, I'm off a couple of days, got new microphones. It was like, I can't, and Pete, it looks a little different, maybe lost a little more hair. He's now retreating to his office during breaks. Commercial break, and he goes sit in his office. I guess he just...
It's the beard, John.
It's the beard. That's right.
It's the beard.
I like, yeah, and maybe that's it. No. I'll tell you what. That's what it was. It wasn't that he's lost more hair. It's that he's grown a thicker beard, and so more hair on the face makes it look like there's less hair up top.
It's supposed to draw the attention away from the top.
It sort of does. No, but you do it right. With the Bruce Willis, keep it low. I got you. Bruce Willis. That's as close to giving Pete a compliment as I'll come on this show. Aside from saying the fact he is the best radio producer in the business, but you already know that.
I'll take it.
That's right. Hollow compliments. I'm full of hollow compliments. SEC Media Days. Currently going on up in Birmingham, wrapping up today. The 4 teams who are currently being grilled in front of the media: Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss. Actually, Alabama and Georgia went earlier in the day. A lot of news. I mean, hey, college football season is just about here. When SEC Media Day comes, that really signals the beginning of the college football news cycle. And thank God, can't get here soon enough. Love college football, love SEC football. Really looking forward to this season. But boy, there's going to be a lot of, because I know we got a lot of Gator fans listening, a lot of Gator fans in this area. And I've been telling you for months that I'm very skeptical about the Florida Gators this year. Not sure they're going to be very good. Don't think they're going to be very good. Now, I might not be going way out on a limb saying that. They were so bad last year. But I just didn't see any, not only did they not bring in any skill players on offense in recruiting who could help them instantly, or not many anyway, LaTroy Pittman maybe, but missed out on a couple of their targets at wide receiver where they desperately need help. So it's going to be the same cast of characters, minus a few guys like Rainey and Demps. But they brought in new offensive coordinator Brent Peace, and apparently they're not going to let him bring his playbook with him. Using the same playbook they used last year, just letting Peace call the plays. Now, apparently the SEC media agrees with me because, they always do their voting. 222 media members, record number, by the way, voted on things like the media's preseason All-SEC team, the media predictions, preseason poll. LSU, the overwhelming choice, media's choice to win the conference. 129 first-place votes. Next closest, Alabama, with 65. Georgia following with 14. So LSU 129, Alabama 65. The next closest, Georgia at 14. So same as last year. At least that's the projection. LSU and Alabama are going to be sort of the dominant big dogs in the conference. Now, how much does the media know? Are these guys truly experts? Well, out of the last 16 years, they've only picked the winner correct twice. That surprised me, because it's not like, you have a shocker in the SEC every year. Conference title over the last 16 years basically changed hands among the same 4 or 5 teams. But the media doesn't get this right very often. As far as the individual division breakdown, again, LSU projected to win the West. Not surprising, considering they're also projected to win the overall conference, followed by Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. As far as the East goes, 132 media members think Georgia will win the SEC East, followed by South Carolina at 72. Florida got 12 votes. Missouri, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky. I happen to disagree with the media on that one. I really like South Carolina this year. You've probably heard me say it on the show. I think they're flying a little bit under the radar. Not a lot of people talked about them towards the end of last season because they did not play in the SEC championship game. Despite beating Georgia and going undefeated against the rest of the SEC East, the Gamecocks missed out on the SEC championship game. Of course, Georgia got to avoid Alabama, LSU, and Arkansas. Big reason for that. But the Gamecocks quietly really got it going at the end of last year. First 11-win season in school history. Finished the season by blowing out rival Clemson and then beating Nebraska badly in the Capital One Bowl, and Nebraska wasn't bad last year. And Marcus Lattimore, who was the highest vote getter among media members as far as all SEC performers. Unanimous first-team All-SEC running back. If this guy's right, and I say if, because it was a devastating knee injury he suffered last year. It was really hard to see. I mean, it was a stereotypical case of a guy who's an absolute can't miss at the next level. I mean, Marcus Lattimore probably could have played in the NFL last year. I mean, the guy is a man among boys playing in the SEC, which is the toughest league in the country. Just runs through tackles. Suffered a really ugly knee injury. Now, I know they've made a lot of advancements in that type of surgery over the last 10 or 20 years. But it looked like the type of injury that could have a permanent effect on somebody. Let's hope not. Now, reports out of Media Days, the players who were up there, Steve Spurrier, Connor Shaw, a couple of the other guys, they took to the podium day before yesterday, and they said Lattimore looked like 100%, said he was back to old Marcus. doing everything with the team all offseason in terms of conditioning. Said he was explosive in his cuts. Of course, it seems like people always say the right thing when it comes to injuries like that and how players are coming back from injuries. We'll see when the rubber meets the road. We'll see if Marcus Lattimore is still the same player, still running over people. Even if not, I mean, South Carolina got hot last year after he went down. Almost like they were a little too reliant on him in the beginning of the season. Freshman Brandon Wilds, who'll be a sophomore this year, and senior Kenny Miles, or Miles will be a senior this year, they filled in nicely for Lattimore, and Spurrier said a couple of days ago those guys would get a lot of time this year. South Carolina is good on defense, especially on the defensive line. And even though a lot of people, the media, some national media members, obviously the media this week at SEC Media Days, people seem to be in love with Georgia. And the Bulldogs, Aaron Murray, a good quarterback, voted second team preseason All-SEC by the media. Tyler Wilson of Arkansas given the first team nod. Aaron Murray's a good quarterback, but Murray I thought was disappointing at times last year. I expected him to be a little bit better than he was last year. Has all the physical tools. We'll see if he can put it all together. Of course, Georgia's best running back, Isaiah Crowell, was kicked off the team a couple of weeks ago. They do have a couple of five-star freshmen who will be replacing him. I mean, Dogs are going to be tough, no doubt about it, but I don't know. I favor South Carolina in the East. I give the Gators next to no shot. Media picks them third. Wouldn't surprise me if they lose to Tennessee. I expect them to lose to Texas A&M in the SEC opener. Wouldn't surprise me if they lost to Tennessee. Now, hey, I've been wrong on these things before, and if I'm wrong, I'll come right here on this show and tell you I was wrong. But I predict another 5 or 6 loss season for the Gators this year, and it'll be interesting to see if that does happen. Because by this time in the Ron Zook era, FireRonZook.com had already been created. I don't hear the same type of rumblings about Will Muschamp, even though you'd expect the fans to have a quicker trigger on Will Muschamp. Just simply for the fact Muschamp, he's a guy who played at Georgia. He's coached elsewhere in the SEC. I've said before that Muschamp's entire adult life, until the day he was hired to coach Florida, he hated the Gators for his entire adult life. I guarantee it wasn't neutral. Think about that. That's a guy who played for Georgia, was beaten up in some of those Florida-Georgia games that he actually took part in. Beaten up meaning that Georgia's team lost to some of Spurrier's Gator teams. Did not have success against the Gators, then coached against the Gators elsewhere in the SEC. So you'd think Gator fans would see this guy as sort of an outsider who came in to take over the team, led them last year to their worst record in 30 years, or it's the worst team I've seen in 30 years. I guess tied for the most amount of losses. I can't remember ever in my lifetime seeing a Gator team as bad as that team last year. And quite frankly, I don't expect them to be much better this year. Muschamp spoke at length at SEC Media Days yesterday. Thought he had a couple of interesting things to say. The quarterback competition, which I guess is the number one thing that most Gator fans are curious about heading into this season. The offense was just so bad last year. It's just so unusual to see a Florida offense that is that inept. And a lot of it had to do with the quarterback play. Now, both of the guys, Jacoby Brissett, Jeff Driscoll, were highly touted guys coming out of high school. They were freshmen last year, so I think a lot of fans sort of cut them some slack and are ready to see what they have this year. Muschamp said the competition was even, dead even, heading into fall camp. Would not reveal anything, really. And you wonder why this is. Is it truly even? Maybe it is. But I find it a little hard to believe that throughout all of spring practice, Muschamp doesn't have in the back of his mind a slight idea as to who may be the front runner here. Now, maybe he wouldn't say that because he doesn't want that guy getting a big head, or he wants to see how that guy's going to respond in the fall, or maybe, as has been speculated, he wants to kind of string these guys along because he doesn't want to transfer. Because before it was announced several months ago that Charlie Weis was leaving to coach Kansas, a lot of people were saying Jeff Driscoll was on the way out because Weis appeared to favor Jacoby Brissett. Driscoll, in high school, Driscoll was a little bit more of a guy who ran the ball a little bit. It's considered an athletic quarterback. Can throw it as well. He was a little bit more highly rated than Brissett. We'll talk about those ratings coming out of high school in a second. But Driscoll was a little more highly rated than Brissett. I think a lot of Gator fans sort of thought he'd be the better player. Brissett, a more traditional drop-back quarterback, appeared to be a better fit in Charlie Weis's offense. A lot of people thought Driscoll was going to transfer. So a lot of people think that's why now Muschamp will not reveal a favorite because he wants to wait till the season's just about to start, so it's too late for somebody to transfer in case it doesn't work out with the guy he ends up naming the starter. Now, we told you last week when the SEC coaches released their preseason All-SEC team, there were no Florida Gators on the first-team offense or first-team defense. Kicker Caleb Sturgis was named a first-teamer, but no Gators on the first-team offense or defense. There were no Gator offensive players on the second. There were no Gator offensive players on the second team. This is the SEC coaches' preseason All-SEC team. There were a couple of defensive players on the second team: safety Matt Elam, linebacker John Bostic, defensive lineman Sharif Floyd. Well, the media has now released their preseason All-SEC team. That was the coaches. The media has released theirs, and they have even less faith in the Florida Gator players. So only one Gator player cracked the media's preseason team.
All right, hang on one second.
First or second team. Talking about offense or defense. Caleb Sturgis was named the first team kicker. But no offensive players named to the first or second team. And only safety Matt Elam, who was named second team in the media's preseason All-SEC team. Only safety Matt Elam, the Gators' lone representative on the first or second team. Which brings me back to what I was saying just a second ago about, that was, Pete just gave me a funny look. That was a coin that I dropped. I'm sure you could hear that on the microphone. Probably not good to play with coins on live radio. See, you can hear that type of thing. Pure professionalism here, 1420 Studios. But anyway, I was talking about these recruiting rankings, Rivals.com and all these other sites. It's become a cottage industry, rating these high school players. What differentiates a 4-star from a 5-star? Who has the best class year after year? Well, when you look at this year's Florida Gator team, and you look at how they appear to be completely devoid of all SEC level talent if you listen to the coaches or the media. After the coaches and the media, who else knows more about SEC football? Me and you? Maybe. For what it's worth, I agree with the coaches and the media in their assessment. But, so you see a team that might not have any all-SEC caliber players, and you look 2 and 3 years ago, the recruiting classes that build up this team, folks, those recruiting classes were ranked number 1 in the country, number 2 in the country, top 5. You remember Urban Meyer was on a roll there. He was signing the best players from all over the country. That class that brought in all those defensive players, Sharif Floyd, Dominique Easley, Ronald Powell. Those guys should be there in their all-SEC primes now, and, just hasn't worked out, so this is a lesson. Be very careful. A lesson that Florida State fans know quite well, for that matter, because Florida State has been consistently ranked in the top 5 to 10 to 15 in the country in recruiting for over a decade and have been nothing but mediocre, really, since the late 90s. Certainly for 10 years now. Going to go to the phones now. We have Daryl on the line. Daryl, you're on the Social Gambler Radio Hour. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good. How's everything going?
Hey, going good, my man. What's going on?
Hey, you know, Miami, you can almost throw them in the same category as Florida State. At least our rankings in the recruiting has not been so high, but our level of play has not been up to par since the 90s almost. Well, not really. We won a national championship in the 2000s.
But you're right. For the last 10 years, really, we talked about last year, Daryl. I mean, can you remember a year where Florida State, and Miami, the three of them were so bad as last year? I mean, again.
Well, can you remember a year when neither one of those teams had a first-round pick and the earliest person selected from the state of Florida was from the University of Central Florida?
You're exactly right.
Man, football has gone down in our state, and something needs to be done about it. I don't know what, but something needs to be done about it. And I'm not so sure. I guess my comment I call to say is that is Muschamp going to be around next year if his recruiting classes, if the SEC coaches and the media feel like his team is not going to be a very good team, and if his team doesn't play like a very good team and they wind up like 500, do you see him coming back? Or do you see Jeremy Foley just said, hey, we're going to part our ways right now before this thing gets any stinking?
Well, to be honest with you, Gerald, I'd be surprised because Muschamp was Jeremy Foley's hire. I'd be surprised if Foley moved on after this year. However, right now, we're not hearing any talk. And to me, like I said, in the Ron Zook era, fans by this point had already erected a fireronzook.com website, and that was a matter that was being discussed heavily. I mean, it was on shows like Pardon the Interruption. I mean, that was a national thing. And not hearing that about Will Muschamp, and that's what I'm wondering. If the Gators have another season that it looks like they're going to have, I mean, the media says it, the coaches say it, me and you, anybody who watched the Gators last year, unless something changes drastically on offense, and we know those changes aren't going to be in personnel because they're rolling with the same group of players, didn't bring in a whole lot of highly touted recruits on the offensive side of the ball. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, but Will Muschamp says repeatedly, we're going to stick with the same thing we did last year, based behind the power running. The thing he said about it was easier to teach one guy than 41 guys, meaning it's easier to teach this new offensive coordinator, Brent Peace, what they do than for Peace to teach the guys what he do. Well, why are you teaching him what you do when what you do clearly doesn't work? Not in the top 100 in the country in offense last year.
That makes no sense, especially when you bring him in there to change things.
Yeah, I agree.
A new offense coordinator in there to put in pretty much a new offense. Maybe not a new offense, but bring in some new thoughts and new ideas. Because last year's offense coordinator, he was not a good one, and I'm glad he's gone. But I don't know, man. I just don't see the Gators doing a whole lot this year. I don't see Muschamp making it through this season without a lot of cries from the Gator fans wanting his neck, and I don't see him coming back next year if he goes 500.
Well, I tell you what, Daryl, you might be right. That's an interesting thought, man. And, hey, I really appreciate the call. And, 500, I know a lot of Gator fans would be really disappointed with 500. But, hey, this team, would you be more surprised they won 10 games or they went 500?
I'd be more surprised if they won 10 games.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And that's I think that feeling is pretty much unanimous. And so
time, we almost could say the same thing about all of those Florida teams, the big three: Florida State, Miami, or the University of Florida. I'd be surprised if any three of those teams won 10 games.
I totally agree.
I'd be real happy if the Hurricanes won 10, though.
I totally agree with you there, Daryl, and I think a lot of people are expecting Florida State to have that type of season, to have a 10-win type season. But, the yearly off-season, overhyped Florida State campaign is in full force again, just like it has been every year for the past 10 years. No team, other than maybe Notre Dame, over the last 10 years, has consistently been built up in the preseason like Florida State, only to disappoint year after year after year. And if they endure another season with 4+ losses, are Seminole fans gonna? I mean, I know Jimbo Fisher smiles in the camera and says, "Hey, we're back and everything's right on track," but the record doesn't show that. When are Seminole fans gonna start saying, "What's going on here? 4 losses is not back,"
Right. And he's not going to get the same kind of pass as Bobby Bowden got. There's no way he's going to get the treatment that Bobby Bowden got. And he has to realize that his seat has got to be getting a little bit warm. Maybe not hot yet, but it's getting a little warm. And a couple more seasons like he had the last 2 years, he's going to be on the hot seat.
Well, yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think a lot of Florida State fans would agree with you there. And, hey, let's face it, Jimbo Fisher, he doesn't deserve to have as long of rope as Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden built that program, took it to sort of heights that were unimaginable back when Florida State was a woman's school, or back when they were a doormat, doormat of college football. Bobby Bowden really made them into what they are. And to me, for Jimbo Fisher or Florida State fans to say that Florida State is back after these last couple 4-loss seasons is an insult to what Bobby Bowden built in the 90s. But, hey, Gerald, I really appreciate your call, man.
Hey, thanks, man. I apologize for speaking about Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Bowden in the same sentence.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, Daryl. That was Daryl 794-9001 if you'd like to get in. We do have Mousy on the line, but Mousy, he'll want to hold through the break, won't he? Because we're going to have to either make it really quick or we're going to have to hold through the break. Yeah, we're going to go to a quick break now. We'll get to Mousy right on the other side of the break. I'm John Arnette. This is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
When you were...
And we're back. No intro music. You know, sometimes when I talk through those breaks, it works out that way. As I said, Pete is the best producer in radio, but he's not magical. Magic or magical? Magic? Anyway, we are back. I am John Arnette. This is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. 794-9001 if you'd like to join us. And we do have Mousy on the line. Mousy, appreciate you holding through the break. How are you, my friend? Hadn't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, you picked a good time to go on vacation, man. You missed the Triple Crown fiasco.
Yeah. Well,
I tell you, that hurt, you know?
Yeah.
And when I'll have another scratch the day before the Belmont, that just, you know, that blew everything. I don't know all the particulars and can't remember all the horses' names, but I don't know if we're ever going to have a Triple Crown again. But...
well, ever's a long time now. I think I'm sure you agree with me, Mousy, but I think that had a lot to do with I'll have another's owners wanting to make sure his stud fees weren't affected. You know, if he happened to, they might have thought he wasn't going to put forth the kind of performance he had in the previous 2 races. What do you think?
Could be, but he did have something wrong with it. What was it? Front left hoof, front left tendon.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's do you think that's factual, or do you think that's sort of what they're putting out there?
I don't know. Now, you know, you were talking about his trainer. Wasn't his trainer the one that's been busted so many times?
That's right.
Yeah.
Currently, Doug O'Neill currently serving a suspension, actually. Not allowed to train horses in California anyway. For now, yeah, for drugging these horses, giving them some sort of cocktail.
Yep.
You know, I don't know all the details of what they actually give these horses, but
yeah, I looked it up, and he's been busted about once a year for the last 15 years for milkshake horses. You know,
is that right? Yeah.
And yeah. Now, one more thing. In November's election, we're going to need you because I think it's going to be on the ballot whether we need a casino here or not. I just looked up the primary election, and there's nothing on there about that. But the general election, they don't have the ballot up there yet. But we're going to need your program when it comes to whether we need a casino here or not.
Well, that's certainly nice of you to say, Mousy. Flattering. You know, I'm not sure if we can actually, you know, affect the minds of voters. I try to leave that to the man through the glass. You know, here in the 1420 studios, we also have 1240 in here, and Tim Constantine is on 1240, and his realm is politics. But for what it's worth, I think this country, you know, if we're as free as we always say, land of the free. Well, if we're that free, you know, where's the freedom in that area? Nothing wrong with casino gambling, you know, and for the people who think that legalizing casino gambling will somehow lead to an increase in crime or a decrease in productivity, you know, I say look at Europe. A lot of economies in Europe are doing better than our economy that allow gambling.
Yeah, well, look at Jacksonville. Best bet over there in Jacksonville at Regency.
You're absolutely right. That best bet is just raking it in over there.
What they want to do is put a casino on I-95, but they don't want one that looks like Vegas, you know, or even one as big as Vegas, like Caesar's Palace. If you keep it down, keep the size down, have plenty of parking, but keep the size down, I think the voters might not object to it. But some people's idea is this is going to look like Vegas when you drive through here, and this is the nation's oldest city. What you want to see is castles and forts and soldiers and pirates. Yeah, you know, but you know, I think you can blend both of them if you do it right.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mousy. You tell me, whatever local politician is going to back that, we will have him on the show here. If he wants to be on the show, we'll have him on the show, and we'll let him advance his platform to open a casino right here. I have no problem with that. You get back to me at some point with whichever politician that is, and we'll see if we can't make that happen.
Okay, sure enough. And I've got a race for you tomorrow.
Go ahead, give it to me.
Quick, because tomorrow's Saratoga's opening season, but 70% chance of rain. Now, don't you love it?
Okay, yeah. Puts a little bit of unpredictability into it right there.
The numbers real quick instead of the names.
Give it to me.
If it doesn't rain, take 7, 1, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm. 7, 1, 4, 5.
Take 1, 7, 2.
That's at Saratoga.
I went through and found the motors out of there.
That's at Saratoga.
That's race 8 at 4:55 p.m.
So that's race 8 at Saratoga, 4:55 p.m. on Saturday.
Friday, tomorrow.
Oh, on Friday. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it was. I get my days mixed up here, Mousy. Feels like Friday.
Saturday because Saturday is usually when I call it.
You usually call on Friday, exactly. So I had it mixed up. I was talking to Mousy. I figured it was a Friday. But yeah, tomorrow, Friday, 4:55 p.m. here, Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. Up in Saratoga, you like 7-1-4-5 if it's not raining, 1-7-2 if it is raining.
Right. Now, if it rains, I'm not going to be responsible.
All right, no, that's a deal. We don't hold your feet to the fire on any of these, Mousy. We know the way it works, and hey, we do appreciate the tips.
Okay, and good luck to you.
Have a good one.
Okay, thank you now. Bye-bye.
That was Mousy, regular caller to the show, likes to call in the horse racing tips, and we like to hear it. Good to hear from Mousy. Hadn't heard from him in a few weeks there, have we, Pete?
Guess not.
Yeah. Anyway, SEC Media Days, as I said, wrapping up today up there in Birmingham. So tomorrow we'll talk plenty more. So we'll have fresh news. Mark Richt, Georgia Bulldogs. Mark Richt taking the podium today. I'm sure he had some interesting things to say. We'll get to some of that tomorrow. One other thing I wanted to mention that Will Muschamp said that I think will be of great interest to people in this area. He was asked about keeping the Florida-Georgia game in Jacksonville. Now, as you may know, Mark Richt at times over the last 5, 10, 12 years has advocated that the game not be played at Jacksonville every year. It rotate either between Jacksonville and Atlanta or rotate between the campuses at University of Florida, University of Georgia. Now, this comes off as sour grapes to me, and I know it did to a lot of people. Georgia didn't have any problem with the game being played in Jacksonville when they were winning every year in the Vince Dooley era. Just when they started losing in the Ray Goff, the Jim Donnan, Mark Richt eras, now all of a sudden it's some big issue. It's some sort of, it's not fair, not a true neutral site. Listen, I go to the Florida-Georgia game every year, or near every year. I try to. It's a great time. It's great for the city, great for the area, Northeast Florida. And if you've ever gone to the game, you know that is a true neutral site game. In this stadium, it is split 50-50, a line right down the middle, red and black, orange and blue. Anyway, Will Muschamp was asked about that today. I thought his answer was good for Northeast Florida, and it, took a subtle little dig there at Mark Richt. Muschamp said, quote, on the Florida-Georgia game in Jacksonville, he said, quote, "It's a great tradition. Leave the game in Jacksonville. Coach Dooley never complained about it being there." Take that, Mark Richt. Meaning Coach Dooley coached a team that was good enough where he could actually win there. Why would he complain about it being there? And if Georgia fans were honest with themselves, and the tide's turning here now. I mean, Georgia has been better than Florida here. It's going to be better than Florida again this year probably. But if Georgia fans were honest with themselves, the reason they've had so much trouble in the last 20 years in this game, more years than not, their team hadn't been as good. It has nothing to do with the fact the game's played in Jacksonville instead of Atlanta or whatever. World's largest outdoor cocktail party. I know they don't officially call it that anymore. That's still what it's known as. One of the great traditions in college football. I definitely think it should stay right here in Northeast Florida, right here in Jacksonville, even though I know we're in St. Augustine right now. And St. Augustine residents get a little sensitive. also wanted to mention the new kickoff rules in college football. I mean, these were announced months ago, and we mentioned it on the show, but now that college football season's about here, I'm sure a lot of people have forgotten, and it's going to be strange. People have been watching football their whole life. They're going to be saying, what's going on here? Not the fact that they're moving the kickoff from the 30 to the 35. People won't even notice that. But the fact that now touchbacks are going to be at the 25-yard line instead of the 20. That's right. When someone takes a knee in the end zone this year, the ball will be put at the 25-yard line in college football. That's just weird. I'm not sure how many years a touchback has been at the 20, but ever since I've been watching football, guy takes a knee in the end zone, you get the ball at the 20. Not this year. This is an effort to increase player safety, I guess. Same thing the NFL is trying to do. It's believed that more injuries happen on kickoffs because a lot of violent collisions on kickoffs with guys getting a full head of steam sprinting down the field before making tackles or hitting other guys. And so people think that moving it up from the 30 to the 35 will lead to more kicks landing in the end zone, and moving the place where you get the ball with a touchback from the 20 to 25 will encourage people to take a knee once they catch the ball in the end zone. We'll see how that works out. We're about out of time now. Before we go, do want to mention interesting free agency signing in the NBA today. Going to go sort of under the radar, but the Los Angeles Lakers has signed Antawn Jamison, a really underrated small forward who has spent his career in obscurity in Cleveland, in obscurity aside from when he played with LeBron. But with the additions of Steve Nash and Antawn Jamison, the Lakers are positioning themselves for another run in the Western Conference next year. We're all out of time for today. I've enjoyed it, folks. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 for more of the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
St. John's and Flagler County's destination for sports on